What am I doing today? Hello and welcome to day 24. Day 24 of my 30 days until 30. You might have noticed that I did not upload a video yesterday, which should have been 25 days. Which means I didn't even make it a full week of posting a video every day. But that brings me to what I decided is going to be the point of this video, which is my second life lesson that I'm sharing, which is adaptability, adaptation, adapting, adapt. This is related to yesterday, whatever, my last video, life lesson about choice. Today's life lesson is about adapting. So I think everybody regularly ends up in new situations, whether it's a plan that didn't work out or whatever. On top of just like choosing to continue to live and be in that moment, I think that the aspect of it that's today's video is learning to adapt to a new situation. And this is something that I have always been decently aware of, and had to sort of take into step due to having chronic illnesses my whole dang life since I was 10, so not my whole life. The most recent 2 decades of the 3 decades I will soon be completing. This video's going great already, right? So adapting. I think while I've always had this as a concept, again, due to the chronic illness stuff, the method by which I have learned to adapt has changed over this decade. What I mean by this is I used to think that the way to adapt was to adapt sort of how you were doing what you were doing, but be doing basically the same thing, which is pretty close to that joke definition of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So when I was originally in college, that was, again, the opening bookend of my 20s, I was having a lot of trouble because my professors didn't want to meet my accommodations. I was just really struggling. And instead of like actually adapting to maybe a different major or career path is the way, my version at that point of adapting was just to kind of keep running at that brick wall over and over and assume that at some point I was gonna burst through the wall and make it. And I think a lot of my adapting at that time was like, let me try this slightly different studying technique, or like, let me try getting an extra doctor's note, or let me, all of these little things that really weren't adapting. They were just, I'm gonna keep running at the brick wall. Spoiler alert, the brick wall never crumbled. That brick wall is still a brick wall. But I think that the thing that I've learned in the last decade about adapting is that it's not just trying the same thing over and over again. It's sometimes taking a few steps back and trying to decide what you're actually trying to do, reassessing if that's the right thing to do, and then maybe changing how you're trying to get to really what you want to do. So in my case, I originally really wanted to help people who were dealing with problems with medicine and specifically neurological conditions. And so I thought the way that I want to do that is by doing an MD, PhD in neuroscience so that I can be treating patients, helping them get care, but also researching to find better cures or treatments or developments that can help people more long term. And then when I kept running into professors in the neuroscience department not wanting to accommodate me, I kind of just kept flinging myself at that brick wall. And then I eventually had to leave college, as I've touched on before, because apparently running at the brick wall, and I know I'm using that analogy a lot, but it's so apt. But I had to figure out that wasn't gonna work, and so I left, thinking that I was gonna return in a year. You know that story. And then in the years after my original try at college, I had to sort of figure out, okay, so what the hell is life now? Because I was so focused on getting to being a doctor that I suddenly felt as though, like, without being able to do that, I don't even know who I am. And so there was a decent amount of time in those couple of years where I was almost having like a crisis of identity, because who I was meant to be was suddenly seeming less and less and less possible. And then the thing that I think I've learned in the last couple of years, like, I feel like first half of 20s was I'm trying to adapt myself to this environment, but I'm still trying to do the same thing. So I'm not actually adapting. And then the second half of my 20s was, okay, this isn't working. What do I actually want to do? And what can I do to actually get there? Which then had me sit back and think, well, being a doctor isn't the only way of helping people who are dealing with illness and chronic illness and medicine. So I kind of became a little bit more flexible. I kind of just started saying yes to trying different things, doing different things, which led to me helping out a now friend of mine with their political campaign, a local campaign. And then that led me to becoming appointed to a disabilities advisory board for the city of West Hollywood. And that's sort of where I discovered that maybe I can do more on the side of advising and advocating for people with disabilities, rather than trying to treat people one-on-one or find better treatments. And from there, I was able to then say, okay, so what do I really need to be able to do this more professionally or continually? And then that led me to looking at jobs that are in that area, realizing that I kind of really needed to have a college degree to be able to be considered for these jobs. And there was a solid, I think, 2 years where I refused to really go after jobs that required someone to have a college background or college education, because I felt like that's not the type of place that I want to be working, because I think that that is really built on privilege and it doesn't really determine anything about a person's ability or worth or what they can bring to the organization. And I fully stand by all of those things. But at the same time, me just then never having a job wasn't going to do anything. So I again had to sort of adapt what my expectations were in a job that I was trying to look for, to realizing, okay, if basically any job is going to require me to have a college degree, at least any job that I'm physically able to do, again, with my disabilities, cool, then I need to get a college degree, which then made me sort of return to college, discover that there are majors outside of the sciences. Shocker. And a lot of those majors have professors that actually kind of care about their students. Another shock. So I went back to college, got a degree in gender studies, which I am more than happy to talk about probably in a different video, because that would be its own whole long video. But with that, now I'm able to start looking at the next steps, which hilariously has led me simultaneously looking at jobs and looking at possibly wanting to get a master's in public health. And those are kind of two different directions, still going towards the place that I'm going, but trying to adapt to the climate in the United States and where we're probably going to be in the next couple of years, and adapting to my health and abilities and wants and drives at this moment. And I never would have gotten to a place where I was looking at a master's or applying to some of these jobs if it hadn't been for my willingness to sort of adapt and change what I was looking for and change what I thought I was going to be doing. Because if I was still trying to either be a doctor or bust, then I'm done. There's nothing, because the doctor was off the table. If I was still really holding on to, I don't want to work at a place that requires a college education, cool, again, no job. And without a college education, definitely wouldn't be looking at a master's program. So those would both be off the table. If I hadn't been willing to adapt and say, yes, let me help you with this political campaign, which is outside of where I necessarily would have initially thought my efforts would be best used, then I wouldn't have found out about this Disabilities Advisory Board. I wouldn't have become a part of that, and it wouldn't have directed me onto this path. So I think ultimately a lot of what, especially the second half of my 20s, has been is saying yes to things and just taking a step out there and just trying something. And I think that a lot of our society kind of penalizes that, which is really unfortunate. Like, you're expected to go from infancy through college straight, and already by the time you get to college, know your entire life path so that you can go to the correct college for that life path. And then you have to succeed, and then you have to be able to get a job or whatever in that industry immediately, because otherwise employers are going to look back and say, what was this gap about? Or, you know, why did you change majors? Or why were you basically failing out of college your first 4 years of college? That's me. But at the same time, I think that I have found that there is a lot of parts of society that are counter that culture. You know, especially in the queer community, there's a lot more acceptance of people taking alternate life paths and taking more time at some times, or speeding through other times, or having their efforts diverted and going in a lot of different directions, reinvention of yourself, all of these different things that I think makes up sort of the ethos of the queer experience and thus the queer community, and realizing that there are some aspects of life that have that as being okay. And not just okay, but great. And important. Because honestly, I don't think that I would be able to bring the same perspectives to situations and possible job situations now as I would have been able to if I hadn't sort of taken all of these slightly weird paths and just adapted to what was going on and gone with the flow. And I want to live in a world where people are able to go with the flow a bit and bring those other perspectives into a job, into their life, into friendships even. Because let me tell you, life is really, really boring when you're a neuroscience major and your friends are all neuroscience majors and you all want to become doctors and or PhDs in neuroscience, and you're all trying to get the same spots in the same organizations. Those convos don't really go far because there's nothing else to then talk about. And I think relevantly, even on a sort of more micro scale, this lesson about adapting is learning to sort of go with changes instead of fully just fighting against them. Or at least learning which changes are the ones to go with and which ones are the ones to fight against. Because obviously there are a lot of things that happen in life that you do need to fight up against. And this is sort of that prayer of serenity of teach me to accept the things that I can't change, fix the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I butchered that, but you get what I'm saying. But again, on the micro scale, I had this plan of I'm going to do a video every day counting down my 30 days until 30. Easy. And then I felt horrible on day 25. Just super sick. I did not sleep the night before. I was up like every hour, if not every minute, having to go to the bathroom. It was bad. And I caught myself doing what I always do, which is feeling this sense of like, well, if I can't do this, like, what am I even doing? Like, I set out this expectation. I'm gonna hold myself to it. And then I also, again, had to take a step back and say, like, but why? Like, ultimately, just getting a video out there that is going to be pushing my body past what I'm able to do today for the sake of just having gotten a video out there, when ultimately, really, the whole point of this is just to, like, capture the end of my 20s. And honestly, me having to take a day off is kind of emblematic of my 20s. In fact, I will probably need to take a bunch of days off to accurately encapsulate my 20s. And I'm having to decide that that's okay. And that's again where choice and adaptation kind of go hand in hand. Of like, I am choosing to accept that this series isn't going to be perfect. It's not actually going to be necessarily every day. It's going to be what it's going to be. And that's also life, but also with adapting, sort of going with the flow a little bit more. So having some of these videos, like the one on Friday on day 27, literally just being me briefly talking about going to the Abilities Expo. I was intending for all these videos to be a little bit more meaty, but here we are. Same with doing that damn lantern. I was intending for that to be a one video thing. Not, you know, it's going to be probably across the entirety of this month. Adaptation. But yeah, I hope that this distinction is clear enough, because I don't think I'm explaining it well, but I'm still not feeling great. But ultimately, they really do go hand in hand. Am I where I'd hoped to be when I was 30? In most ways, no. But I've had to adapt my expectations, I've had to adapt my goals, I've had to adapt basically every part of my life to adapt to the circumstances that I'm in. Did I want to be in my current job in my 30s? No. I live and work in a boarding house with college girls, and that's kind of exhausting. But I've adapted to having that living situation, work situation being what it is, and trying to make my space more my own, and then choosing to be at peace with it as much as I can. See how they kind of go hand in hand. In my mind, we all start life with a blank canvas, and then as we go through life, it gets to collect all of the different things that make us who we are and gets affected as we go through life. So you add paint, you might add some sketches, you might add some Sharpie marks, you might have some scars, you might have some blemishes, you might have some areas where you think, oh, that was not the best stroke to make. But then at the end, you have something that sort of represents you and your life journey. And part of that is you make choices as you are adding to this painting. You get to choose, you know, I'm going to make this mark here. And sometimes with a canvas, you have to like re-stretch it out a little bit, or you have to realize there's too much paint on the canvas or whatever it is, and then you have to adapt what you're going to then do with it. And to me, that's still, again, what we have to do with life. Is it's not just necessarily setting out for a end goal and getting there and persevering. As much as persevering is really important, when you're persevering because you are a person who perseveres, that's a lot of P's. We're gonna see how good my pop filter is.
Sesame Street was brought to you today by the letter P.
Persevering is important, but at least in my perspective, persevering when you are on like a roller coaster, when you're on tracks, is kind of dangerous, because it's really easy for a train on tracks to get derailed, or I don't know, for the rails to no longer exist and then you're stuck without rails. That analogy isn't working super well, but in the world that we're in these days, it's entirely possible or likely that a track laid ahead of us that has been traveled many times by many other trains is suddenly just not going to exist anymore. And so learning how to sort of off-road or make your own tracks or take a different path, because sometimes a landfall happens in front of you and then you're gonna have to go around the mountain instead of directly through the mountain. Sometimes you gotta go through the mountain, but ultimately it's about adapting. It's not just saying the landfall falls on the tracks ahead of you and you go, well, I'm just gonna go straight at the rocks over and over and over and over and over and over. Okay. Good luck. But also, maybe go around. It's like the clip in Bug's Life.
Oh no! I'm lost! Where's the light? It just What do I do? Help! I'll be stuck here forever.
Do not panic! Do not panic! We are trained professionals! Now stay calm. We are going around the leaf.
Around the leaf? I don't think we can do that.
Oh, nonsense. This is nothing compared to the twig of 93. That's it. That's it. Good. You're doing great. There you go. There you go. Watch my eyes. Don't look away. And here's the line again.
Thank you, Mr. Soil.
Good job, everybody.
That probably would have meant a better analogy this whole ding dang time, but adapting, learning how to sort of change, how to say yes to things, how to go with the flow to an extent. And sometimes adapting will make you have more resolution that who you were before that adaptation is better. And that's great. That's why I always like saying if you are stuck between two choices, try flipping a coin. If you flip the coin and the answer that it comes up with, say is heads, and you feel a little bit of like, alright, well there's a sign that you, even if you weren't fully conscious of it, you wanted tails. Great, choose tails. If you flip it and it's heads, and you go, that's great, or like a sigh of relief, great, now you know you wanted heads. And to me, to an extent, it's the same with all of these things in life where you can end up in a circumstance and go with it for a while and then realize, this isn't actually right for me. Cool. Now you know that's not right for you, and you can adapt back. You can adapt to go in a different direction. And that's, I think, again, a thing that builds a person to being a more complete person, is having these little excursions and these little things that are outside of their direct path that they want to take, that makes them have unique perspectives that can really make everybody's lives a lot more rich. Which I realize sounds very self-aggrandizing. Is that the right word? I'm not saying it about me, but I know like my friends have tried a lot of different things, have done all of these cool things, and that's one of the really cool things about them. Always make your calendars in Expo marker or pencil, not in pen, because that allows you to rewrite what you're doing. And when you allow yourself the freedom to rewrite aspects of your life or what you're doing or where you're headed, usually a rewrite is better than the first draft. That sounded kind of deep. That was kind of deep. But yeah, so your first draft doesn't have to be who you are, what you're doing. You can rewrite it, you can make an edit, you can do all of these amazing things, and then choose to go down that path. See, look at that, I'm tying 1 and 2 together. I should have probably done adapt first and then choose, but you know, that would require a little bit more foresight than I have. But that's going to be it for today. Thank you for being with me on day 24 of my 30 days until 30. I hope that this made any sense. I'm probably not going to have every day for the rest of this be life lessons. It just happens to be the back-to-back videos are life lessons. But here we are. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Bye! I'm turning 30.